um, uh, convince you all that apprenticeship and apprenticeship in conjunction with NAPS is simple and easy to implement and beneficial to industries in many ways. And you please excuse me. I also have a little bit of a cold, so my voice may not be so good, but I need to share a few PowerPoint slides with you. So just bide with me for a moment while I am setting this up. Okay. Sushim, can you confirm that it's audible?
Yes,
and visible?
Yes, it is seen and audible.
Okay, very good. We begin by saying that apprenticeship in India as well as in the West has a very ancient tradition. It started in Europe in the High Middle Ages as the preferred way of passing skills and knowledge of a trade from one generation to the next. But in India, when you think of the tradition of Gurukulam, this is even older. But India, in fact, in 1961 was one of the first countries to formalize apprenticeship. To the best of my knowledge, I think it was only Switzerland, which already in the 1920s had a modern apprenticeship law, and my own country, Germany, followed only in 1969 with this. For the longest time, the Apprentices Act in India, a pioneer piece of legislation, as I would say, was perceived to be too restrictive for industries. But there have been a series of amendments, which you can see on this slide, which were introduced in order to make taking in apprentices easier for industries. And notably, this has been done in 2014, 2016, and 2019, whereas in 2014, the Apprentices Act was amended to introduce optional trades, which makes it much more easy for industries, especially in the service sector, to design curricula of their own. Then NAPS was introduced in 2016, which was meant to incentivize industries to take in apprentices. And lately in 2019, within the rules, we had a few more reforms, and I will explain this in a little bit more detail in a moment. Industry friendliness is the motto for the changes that we have seen in the 2010s to make apprenticeship future-oriented in a way that industries can design courses in new technologies, meeting the future requirements of the sector, that it is open to all, because apprenticeship has been open to STT freshers besides the classic candidates, which are in the area of degree, diploma, and ITI. It's been made much more convenient through the automated portal. And as of late, the portals for designated trade and optional trades were integrated. There are a few teething problems, which some of you may be aware of, but I can assure you also that colleagues are working day and night to take care of this. There's also a greater element of industry self-regulation, because the apprenticeship advisors that are appointed by the states can now be joined by joint apprenticeship advisors who can be appointed from the ranks of the sector skill councils. Establishments are also empowered to conduct examinations, the practical examinations themselves, and issue the associated certificates. Finally, there is no more provision for imprisonment. If a company is not in concurrence with the rules, and the fines are relatively low. Next thing to look at, and this is very recent, in September 2019, we also got a few changes in the apprenticeship rules, which concern Number one, the bandwidth for engagement of apprentices, which was raised from 2.5% to 10%, to 2.5% to 15% of the total manpower in the establishments, effectively allowing industries to have a higher group of apprentices on their staff. The obligation to take in apprentices, the threshold for mandatory has been lowered from 40 to 30. The minimum size for an establishment to take in under optional category was lowered from 6 to 4 staff. And this is important. I will look at it. The grading of stipends, apprenticeship stipends, goes from 5,000 to 9,000 per month. And it is now based on educational qualification. And the stipend to fresher apprentices, when they are in the basic training, is only 50% of the total. We also have an encouraging development of degree apprenticeship, which will facilitate it, apprenticeship embedded degree courses, and also allow non-engineering degree holders to undertake apprenticeship training for their own personal upskilling. Let's look at the scale of apprentices stipends. You can see that they begin with 5,000 per month and are at the top 9,000 per month. This is the minimum that is prescribed under apprenticeship rules, and it covers the entire spectrum from school pass-outs, 5th class to 9th class, who will earn 5,000 in stipends per month, to graduate apprentices, which is at the bottom line, to graduate apprentices or degree apprentices, or apprentices that already have a higher education degree, so they will get 9,000 per month as a prescribed minimum. Obviously, industries are free to arrange or negotiate stipends that are higher than that, and they should be encouraged to do so if the goal is to make apprenticeship more attractive. So, in summary, the basic legal requirements are that the strength, the employee strength of establishments has to be more than 3. For those establishments that have 40 to 30 employees, it is optional to take in apprentices. And for all those establishments that have 30 and more staff, it is mandatory to take in apprentices. Now, this mandatory character of apprenticeship for larger enterprises is obviously largely ignored. We can safely say that the Apprentices Act is also one of the more ignored acts and legal provisions in India, if not anywhere else in the world. Let's come to the general structure of apprenticeship training, which is quite simple and comes in 2 parts. There is a basic training that comes first, which is followed by the on-the-job training. And the basic training takes about 20 to 25% of the total duration of the apprenticeship. It takes place at a basic training providers. ITIs can be basic training providers. But those industries that have adequate resources may conduct basic training also in-house. Conversely, on-the-job training then takes 75 to 80% of the total duration, is supposed to take place at the premises of establishments, though we are looking at opportunities, especially under the auspices of COVID, to make this a little bit more flexible. Maybe that parts can be delivered online. This is learning by doing. Apprentices are to learn entire work processes and establishment, in order to facilitate this, are expected to appoint a person as a supervisor that is qualified in the train. So the on-the-job training is the larger part, and it leads up to final assessment and final exams. Just for completeness sake, this basic pattern of basic training to be followed by on-the-job training, a sequential pattern can be substituted by a parallel pattern where basic training and on-the-job training take place intermittently in blocks. And so they can take turns, which would probably allow for a better integration of theory and practice in the apprenticeship. Sushim, you have already mentioned this, that there is a basic differentiation between designated and optional trades. The designated trade simply means that those are the trades or occupations that are notified by the central governments, whereas the so-called optional trades can be self-created in terms of the curriculum by the employer or by the establishment. And we do find that the designated trades are much more widely spread in the classic industries, but optional trades is now being widely adopted, especially by the service sector. Needless to say that NAPS, which we will speak about later on, is available to both. Under optional trades, there is the one extra condition that courses must be pegged to the National Skills Qualification Framework. There are really multiple benefits of apprenticeship training in India, benefits for industries to take in apprentices. Vasu will speak about the business case after my input. But if I do sum up, there are three. A flexibility advantage, where apprenticeship can be structured according to industry and company needs with regard to the timing and to the structure and to the content. There is, I hop on to number three, a management advantage, where the administration and organization of apprenticeship can be assumed or sourced out to specialized institutions, the so-called third-party aggregators, and Dhruv Vital will speak about this also later on. But this is now my topic, the cost advantage, where the government of India effectively contributes to the cost by the especially created instrument, which is the National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, the cost advantage. We already heard that it was started in 2016, and it assumes the cost of two things. First, of the basic training with the basic training provider, and this is up to rupees 7,500 for 3 months or 500 hours. So this is the upper cap, 7,500 rupees. And secondly, 25% of the cost of the monthly stipend, which is also capped at 1,500 rupees per month per apprentice. And administratively, it works in a way that there are quarterly reimbursements. For designated trades, this is handled by DGT, Director General Training. For optional trades, this is handled through NSDC, in particular, the Apprenticeship Division, which I have the pleasure to head. And there are a few very simple requirements that have to be fulfilled. Apprenticeship contracts have to be uploaded on the portal. I'll speak about this in a moment also, for approval. The alignment of the program and qualification with the National Skill Qualification Framework is required, and joint assessment with NCVT in designated trades or the sector skill councils in the non-designated, meaning to say optional trades. And I can tell from my experience in other countries, there is no such thing as a national promotion scheme anywhere in the world. It is unique to India because normally and in other countries and states, benefits are either directly or directed at apprentices to supplement or substitute stipends, or there are actually penalties for establishments that do not take it. This is, for example, the case in South Africa. The government instituted NAPS to promote apprenticeship training, and he had the ambitious goal to increase the number of contracts from 2.4 lakh back then in 2016 to 50 lakh in 2020. This is supposed to be a cumulative number. We're still a good distance away from it, but apprenticeship is growing even in times of COVID-19 at a remarkable rate. And we do hope to surpass 2.5 lakh or more by the end of this year in optional apprentices. So this was also directed at those employers who were already thinking about taking in apprentices, to get them over the threshold and to incentivize them. And the side effect is that the entire systems of administering apprenticeship become more transparent because they are implemented over the portal. Another side effect is the integrate apprenticeship with short-term programs, so that especially PMKVI, recognition of prior learning, may lead into apprenticeship. And TPAs, as we will hear in a moment, support apprentices and establishments by taking over the administrative work. We've seen this already. The two component advantages, 25% of stipend up to 1,500 rupees a month, and the reimbursement of basic trade costs, 7,500 rupees for up to 500 hours. This can actually be staggered, the reimbursement of the cost of basic training. If there is a parallel scheme and the basic training takes place intermittently and in blocks, alternating with the on-the-job training, and then it would come at, if I'm correct, 10 rupees per hour. What do companies, industries, what conditions do they have to meet to participate in NAPS? They have to be eligible, and that means that they have to have a registered business. They must have a PAN and GST registration. They must register the contract of apprenticeship with the respective apprenticeship advisor of the state, but this is very simply done over the portal. Must find a basic training provider where they send the apprentice to for the basic training part. They must decide whether they want to run it in a designated trade or in an optional trade. And the requirement for course approval in the optional trade, as I had mentioned before, is to make it aligned with the National Skill Qualification Framework. They must also pay the stipend to an Aadhaar-linked bank account into a bank account of the apprentice. This can, by the way, be done through a payment gateway on the apprenticeship portal, which is under construction and will go live soon. And attendance must be entered on portal for the determination of the amount payable, the stipend amount payable. Finally, of course, the responsibility is to conduct the assessment. In the case of optional trades, together with the Sector Skill Council. In the case of designated trade, together with NCVT. I'm not going to read all these numbers to you, but you can see that NAPS has done good from 2015 all the way to 2020-21 by increasing the numbers of apprenticeship contracts in a very impressive way, though even falling short of the ambitious goals of the government when they had instituted it. But nonetheless, it is working. The question may be, are the numbers not as large as anticipated because it is not an attractive scheme, or is it simply because the word hasn't been spread enough to industries and sectors? And I believe that a greater effort needs to be made in making the scheme known to the public. Here we come to the portal, which makes everything absolutely easy. The portal is there to support establishments, of course, that wish to take in the apprentices, candidates, apprentices that are under contract. Besides the future establishment, the active establishments, basic training providers, third-party aggregators, and in the case of degree apprenticeships, also colleges and higher education institutions. And getting started is really easy, because what you need to do is go to the portal of apprenticeshipindia.org. There's a manual and a document of frequently asked questions, which I also think is very good to read. Register online, appoint an in-company trainer as a responsible person, post apprenticeship notice on the portal. When the candidate is selected, upload the contract for approval by the Joint Apprenticeship Advisor. When approved, sign the contract, begin the training. And if this isn't easy enough yet, you may appoint a suitable third-party aggregator to take care of all this work for you. This brings me to the end of my input, and I would like to pass the staff to Vasu Sharma, who will speak to you about the business case of apprenticeship. But in the meantime, thank you for your interest and attention, and over to you, Vasu.
Thank you, Jan. Very good afternoon to all dignitaries, to all participants. I'll just quickly share a few slides on business case for apprenticeship and why, in fact, companies should come forward and take apprentices in their organization. So, Jan, if you could just